Are indie brands missing out on a major part of the eyeshadow market? I feel like they are, because I just scoured my collection for neutral palettes and I feel like a lot of brands are really missing out on capitalizing on neutral palettes. If you guys are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Karen Harris. I like to film tan girl friendly makeup videos here on YouTube. I do focus quite heavily on indie makeup, so if that sounds good to you, if you like to hear about eyeshadow palettes and makeup in general, highly recommend subscribing, turning on the bell so you're notified every time I post. And without further blabbering, let's get into it. Okay, so this video was inspired today by something I saw on my friend Angelica's channel. I will link her down below, and I will try to remember to link her Q&A video that she did, that she kind of mentioned this video idea in, and I was like, ooh, that would be a fun video for me to film, because I do have a lot of palettes, and especially indie palettes, and I also have a medium tan complexion, so I thought this would be a fun perspective to offer you guys. And I feel like it's been so long since I've just sat and chat about eyeshadow palettes, which is obviously my favorite thing to talk about. She did a video kind of answering people's questions about running an indie brand, not even running an indie brand, more like behind the scenes of indie brands. And somebody had said basically like a comment slash insight saying it feels like indie is so geared towards colorful palettes, and like basically can you recommend some neutral palettes or something to that effect. Basically saying that indie brands focus very heavily on colorful palettes, and what are some neutral palettes that we can kind of talk more about that people can maybe check out if they're wanting to try indie but they want something more neutral. So I dug through my collection and found about 17 palettes, but there is a bit of a disclaimer here. Not every palette is a full neutral palette. Some of them have some grungy greens, some beautiful purples, we have some colorful mattes, but I did try my best to find my favorite neutral palettes, and I also tried to find things that I knew would be in stock, not like limited edition palettes or things that had been discontinued. So I did try to go through my phone really quick and check out the different websites and make sure things were kind of in stock. I will of course do my best to link everything down below in case you guys are interested in shopping any of these palettes. And I think I have discount codes with pretty much every brand in this video, except maybe one or two, I'm not 100% sure. But any discount codes I do have, I will flash on the screen and put in the description box. And if you use my codes and links to shop, I really appreciate it because it really helps me out, helps support my channel. So thank you in advance for that. I feel like I've said everything I need to say, so let's go ahead and roll into my palette picks. Okay, so the first one is definitely one that I don't think is a straight neutral palette, but I was thinking of my Adept palettes and I was like, gosh, all of them are quite colorful. This one is the Flying Fiddles palette, and as you can see, the shimmer shades are more neutral leaning shimmer shades. There are a couple of colorful ones, but I feel like that's really those three shades right there. And then we have this green Kelly shade that is a teal color, but the rest of the palette is mostly neutrals. And I'm pretty sure when Adept launched this palette, they did say that this was kind of a neutral palette. This was like the neutral palette that people had been asking about. They also had one, I think it was called like something Minx, but I don't think they sell that one anymore. And that one's a very shimmery palette. I think that's an all shimmer palette actually, but it's more neutrally. I did have a eye swatch video with that one a long time ago, but I'm trying to give you guys something that's a one and done type palette as well. So if you want to create a perfect neutral eye look with this palette, I think you might have all the shades you're looking for right here. Okay, in second place, here's another one that is kind of sketchy. So this is the Melted Mattes palette from Beaute Bar, and this is an all matte palette. They did do a smaller shimmer palette with this one, so if you wanted some neutral-ish shimmers, you could grab that one. I didn't think those shades were that neutral though, so I'm not including it in this video, but as you can see here, the two top rows are a gradient of neutral shades. We have warm and cool tone shades. So obviously the rest of the palette is not really gonna be helpful if you're looking for neutral mattes, but I wanted to show it to you again just in case you were looking for a neutral palette from an indie brand. Beaute Bar makes some of my favorite formulas, so I wanted to include them in this video. I will say this might be some brands' opportunity to add a neutral palette to their collection. Some of my favorite indie brands I didn't even want to mention in this video because I just couldn't justify calling some of the palettes neutral palettes. I did find some palettes that are less colorful, but I just couldn't justify calling them neutral palettes. So bit of a conundrum here, but I do still have some good neutral options as well. The next two palettes are from one of my favorite indies as well. So this is Ensley Reign. And the thing about Ensley Reign is their palettes are a bit pricey, so that might deter people from trying them. But I know they have a Black Friday sale going on. I don't think these palettes are included. But honestly, I feel like for the amount of shades you're getting, I feel like you're getting good bang for your buck. But that's just my opinion. I think they sent this one to me, but the next palette I'm pretty sure I purchased with my own money. So this is the Harvest Moon palette, and as you can see, it's a massive palette. We've got 2 rows of beautiful shimmer shades. So there's 14 shades right here of gorgeous shimmers, and then we have some beautiful dark neutral mattes. There is like a green matte here as well as like a red and a more orange tone, but I feel like overall I would consider this a neutral palette. Again, not a true neutral palette. Like if we were like, okay, I just want 50 shades of brown, like I know this isn't gonna cut it, but I wanted to show them to you because I do think they're beautiful. And then this is the Groovy Garden palette. So this one, they switch it up. So they did 14 mattes and then 7 shimmer shades. Again, stunning holochrome shades. She has beautiful multi-chrome shimmers as well. I'm a shimmer galley, as you can tell. But the mattes are incredible, and I think this is such a fun, like groovy 70s themed palette, and it's just really good. So if you're looking for a neutral palette from Ensley Reign, I would recommend this. They have also been doing like a little woodland creatures series. They did do a squirrel palette. I'll put up a picture. I don't have that one. I was gonna get it, but honestly, I just have too much right now to review, so I decided to hold off on it and see if they were gonna come out with more palettes in that series. But I think it's called like Nutty by Nature. Again, you'll see a picture of it. That's a really cute neutral palette too. If you want to try Ensley Reign and you want to try neutrals and you don't want to spend like 40, 50 bucks, maybe that might be a good option for you. Now, this is a palette that I think Angie mentioned when she was talking about this question in her video. So this is the Glaminatrix Cosmetics Barely Basic palette. I really like that Glaminatrix has like a full neutral palette. I feel like they also started off as an indie brand that did very colorful eyeshadows, and I feel like the last year or two they've been doing more pinks and more neutrals. And I mean, now I get it because apparently there's not enough neutral palettes in the indie category. So watch me say this and now everybody's gonna do neutral palettes and I'm gonna be sitting here like, guys, come on now. But anyway, this is a beautiful palette. Again, it's got beautiful gradients. So there's light row, medium row, and a deeper row of the same kind of greens and browns and stuff like that. And then we have beautiful like transformative iridescent like duochrome shades and then some beautiful metallics. So Glaminatrix is a Australian indie brand. So if you're shopping in Australia, highly recommend checking them out. Obviously, you can shop them anywhere, but I just wanted to mention that in case I have any Aussie subscribers that are like, Karen, where can I buy indie makeup? This is one really solid brand that I would highly recommend if you live in Australia. So when I saw that Cosmic Brushes, which is one of my favorite indie brands, is coming out with a neutral palette, I was like, ah, man. But now that I've seen the need for neutrals in the indie realm, I totally am so glad that I have this palette to show you guys, because this palette is so beautiful. So this is the neutrals palette, and they did launch this year. I think this might be one of my like top at least 20 palettes of 2024, but it's a neutral palette, but I just feel like the tones are great, and we have some nice light shades, we have some good dark shades, we have beautiful shimmer shades, and the price is so right with Cosmic Beauty. Actually, they changed their name and I keep calling them by their old name, but they're called Cosmic Beauty now. And this is a great palette. I know they recently restocked this, so if you have a chance to grab this, highly recommend doing so, because their palettes actually sell out. and they have a hard time keeping their popular palettes in stock. So if you see this and you're interested, highly recommend. I do also have videos on every palette that I'm talking about in this video. So if you want to research further, you can always head to my YouTube channel and just search the name of the palette or search the brand name and you should be able to find a playlist. I do have like a neutral eyeshadow playlist, but I don't think I've updated it. So anyway, love that palette. So good. Highly recommend any palettes from Cosmic Beauty. They just make the best ones. And then I grabbed the Fighter palette from Fantasy Cosmetica. This is another favorite brand of mine. They're an indie brand, and well, all of these brands are indie brands, but this is a great palette. It's like a half cool tone, half warm tone neutral palette. It's got 5 shimmer shades and 4 mattes, and I feel like if you're looking for something simple, easy, condensed, this might be a good one to pick up. And then we have from Unearthly Cosmetics. I feel like calling this like a neutral palette again is going to be a bit of a stretch, but it's definitely one of the more neutral palettes they have. And honestly, the quality of this palette is so good. Unearthly Cosmetics is a German indie brand, so I'm not sure if everybody on my channel has heard about them. They recently collabed with Avatar: The Last Airbender, and this is the fire themed palette. It's so beautiful. One of my favorite neutral palettes in my collection. Take that with a grain of salt because I do see this bright orange just like looking right back at me in my viewfinder, but still, it's really good. I mean, if you take that out, it's, I mean, basically a very neutral palette in my opinion. Okay, I wanted to give you guys a mainstream pick where like you could go into an Ulta and pick this up. So this is the Juvia's Place Coffee Shop palette. I know they're a little bit more mainstream, but they really did start off as a indie brand, and mine is brand new. Super embarrassing. It's definitely one of those palettes that I purchased and had full intention of playing with, but haven't. So I guess I can't really speak to the quality of this particular palette, but I have used Juvia's Place for a long time, and I would be so shocked if this palette was bad. So I do apologize for not having actually tried this palette, but with my experience with Juvia's Place, they usually make very solid palettes. Very affordable. They always have sales as well. I know they've had a ton of little mini palettes, 6-pan and quads that are neutrals that have come out over the years. I did do a huge declutter in 2023, so I did get rid of a lot of smaller palettes from them, but I'm sure that if you're on the hunt for a neutral palette, Juvia's Place has you covered. Okay, now on to another favorite brand of mine, Nomad Cosmetics. So this is a great 6-pan neutral palette. They also came out with another more red tone one, but this is their Abu Dhabi inspired palette, and Nomad Cosmetics makes travel themed palettes. So this is part of their like Nomad Air series, which is like all travel themed products, and this is super cute. You just have everything you need. 2 shimmers and 4 mattes that go with it. This one is again another one that's sitting on the fence as far as a neutral palette goes. This is their Chicago palette that they just came out with. They also just launched their Polar Express one, but this was the one before that. And again, this is not really a neutral palette. It's definitely got some colorful duochrome shades in it, but a majority of these mattes are neutral. This one is called the Green Mill. I don't think you can make a Chicago palette without a green shade. That just seems like they would have been selling the palette short. But overall, it's a really spicy neutral palette because those duochrome shades really transform the effect on the lids. And then again, another one that's on the fence, but I feel like this has a lot of neutral matte shades. This is their Okawangu Safari palette. This one came out, I think, last year, so I don't know how much longer they're going to carry it on their site, but they have a lot of beautiful neutral shades. Yes, it does have some pops of green, but that was kind of what was really hyped when it came to eyeshadow palettes a couple of years ago, so I totally get that. And honestly, I feel like even if you are a neutral girly, you can kind of mix these greens in with these browns and get a very neutral vibe. So I wouldn't be too scared of the greens, but those are just the 3 I wanted to mention from Nomad Cosmetics, a favorite brand of mine. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video even more is because I just got my hands on this palette. So this is the Just a Taste palette from Unearthly Cosmetics. They sent it to me in PR. This palette has not been announced yet as I'm filming it, but I'm wearing it today on my eyes. So you will see the reveal of this and my 2 looks with this palette before you see this video, obviously. When I swatched this palette, I got so excited because I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like everybody that loves Unearthly is gonna love that they created this beautiful big neutral palette, and people that have been wanting to try Unearthly are probably gonna want to try Unearthly when they see this color story. This palette is gorgeous. It's got so many beautiful shades, and this shade I can't wait to play with. It's like a beautiful bronzy purple color. Overall, it is so beautiful, and it's just gonna be so perfect for holiday. So glam. We've got a few kind of olivey tones. We've got a few purples. We've got some pops of orange and some great brown shades. And I don't know, I just love this palette. I always love how Amanda lays things out. Everything can be used as a duo. You can also go trio, or you can do a 9-pan, or you can even do 6-pan. She does really good layouts. So I love this palette. If you are thinking about it, honestly, highly recommend. This is going to be a fun way to treat yourself this holiday season if you want to try a neutral palette from an indie brand, in my opinion. Okay, so now we have a few really safe options. A great place to look for neutral palettes is Sydney Grace. They have just been coming out with neutral palettes, and I'm so appreciative because I am on their PR list. But for me, like, if you've watched my channel for a few months or even the last 10 years, like, you know that this might not be my vibe, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk about Sydney Grace if I'm going to talk about neutral palettes. So this is their Unveil palette. They did it as a collaboration. And the cool thing about Sydney Grace too is they do light and deep versions of their palettes. So depending on your skin tone, you can go ahead and take a look at the swatches and kind of decide what tones would work with you better. So this is the Unveil Light palette. I think they send me both of these, and I don't think there's like a huge difference in the shades, but sometimes it does matter. So I just want to mention that. They also do their like Christmas in July sale where they come out with more palettes. I just don't know like everything that's in stock, but if I can find any more neutral palettes from them that I recommend you checking out, I'll put them in the link down below as well. I do have a non-affiliated code with Sydney Grace, so you'll just get to save some money when you use it, but I just wanted to mention this brand because I feel like when I first started getting into indie makeup, they were so hyped. And I don't know if it's just the people that I watch talk about them less, but I just feel like you can't talk about indie and you can't talk about neutral palettes without mentioning Sydney Grace because they make so many neutral palettes. My last 3 picks are all from the same brand, and it's Lunar Beauty. Let's be real. Manny MUA loves a good neutral moment. I have a feeling that his holiday collection is also going to be a neutral palette. So this is the Nude Prism palette. It's the iconic neutral palette from Lunar Beauty, and this is what it looks like. I really like all of his palettes that have gone with this like lunar packaging. I know that he did some other ones previously, like Life's a Drag and stuff like that. I feel like the quality has just gotten better and better, and I feel like they've really hit their stride with Lunar Beauty, so I'm super impressed with the brand overall. So I pretty much buy every single one of these palettes, and yeah, this is a really solid neutral palette. I mean, as you can see, I showed you what we're picking from, and I feel like this is the most neutral, best quality, just, you know, great packaging. Everything about it is solid 10 out of 10. And then Lunar Beauty and Laura Lee collabed, and basically they're best friends. They have a podcast together, and so this is called the Full Fantasy, which is a play on words because their podcast is called Full Coverage. Again, not the most neutral palette because we do have like a pop of plum here and then a black shade, and then we have the shade called Aries, which is a duochrome shade. But overall, I think another great solid neutral palette. So if you want true neutrals, go with Nude Prism. If you want to get a little spicy, you can go with Full Fantasy. And then if you want to go over to the wild side, which is where I live, you can get the Moonshroom palette. This one is so cute. I feel like this is one of the most interesting color stories that Manny has done. I know I've seen this compared to other palettes, but honestly, I don't really play that game when I'm, you know, getting a new palette for the first time. Probably should, but this is my job, so I love having a variety of palettes from a variety of brands. And yeah, I just feel like this is for the neutral lovers that want to take a little trip on the wild side. Of course, we have some yellow tones here, but we do have some browns here and like some more neutrally shades, but I just feel like this is such a fun palette, so I had to mention it, even though I was trying really hard to find you guys true neutral palettes. So that is it. Those are my 70 neutral palettes that I found in my over 500 eyeshadow palette collection. I, of course, only included indie brands, and like I said, I could have pulled more palettes, but I wanted to try and find like true neutral palettes. I will also say that to the indie brands' defense, I don't always buy neutral palettes when indie brands put them out. Like, I know other brands that have neutral palettes out there, but I don't really go out of my way to pick those up. I will also say there has been a boom of cool tone palettes that are more neutral leaning, or like lots of like pinky blue, neutrally cool tone palettes. So you might be able to find something like that if you're into that. Otherwise, I feel like mainstream does just seem to have more neutral options. And now with like one and done eyeshadows being a thing, I feel like that's gonna be a whole nother can of worms. But hopefully this was helpful to you guys, especially with Black Friday around the corner. I'm sure a lot of these brands will be having some sales. So if you have a friend that you're dying to pull into the indie dark side, send them this video and tell them to write down some of the palettes that they're interested in, and we can help them out and get them in the right direction, get them onto team indie brands, because you guys know they just make the best eyeshadows. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, my monthly giveaway is linked in the bio. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed. Definitely give it a thumbs up if you did. And I'm sure YouTube will be popping up a video for you guys to check out, or a playlist or something, so we can keep hanging out. And if that's all the time you have today, I hope I see you in another video very soon. Bye, friends!